Welcome back to another episode of Victory Monday. I am your host, Trey, with co-host Kyran, and we are joined today by a special guest for especially the Nashville community, Joe Dubin, otherwise known as Big Joe on the Go. So Joe, thank you for joining us. And first of all, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, are you a Nashville native, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I grew up here, yeah, and I went to McGavick, graduated back in '86, a long time ago. So I ran the streets of Hermitage and Donaldson, and we'd go to the Hickory Hollow Mall back in the day, Rivergate Mall. This was all mid-'80s stuff. We'd cruise the malls for hours, and people like, what did you really did? Yeah, I mean, we all did every weekend. And so then you kind of grow up, and then you get married and have kids, and you kind of miss those days. But I'm a Nashville native through and through. It's funny. There's a bunch of us out there. People think, oh, there's no more Nashville natives. There's a lot of us out there that are still here, in addition to the 10,800 that are moving to town every single day. But we're here, and I've had chances to leave and TV to go out west to Phoenix and Dallas and Tampa, and it just didn't feel right. I mean, this is home, and then once the Preds and the Titans got here, and then it started feeling like a big time city. Then the wheels started moving. So yeah, I'm proud to say that I'm that unicorn that grew up in Nashville, and I'll probably will never leave. And that's fine. It's a great city. I mean, everything is great here, and my kids are here. I mean, my daughter grew up here. She got married to in Mississippi now, but it's a wonderful place to live. So I'm proud to be from here.
I'll be here for life too.
I may end up there, but anyway, Joe. So Nashville native. Where'd you go to high school?
Went to McGavick. It's the same high school The Rock went to. The Rock only went there for 6 weeks, and then he went to Glencliff for a week, and then he moved to Pennsylvania. His father was a wrestler. So back in the mid-'80s, Nashville and Memphis had a really strong local wrestling scene. So you were based out of here, but you would travel to Southeast. And so his father, they moved here, and his father trained here for a while. He went to McGavick. Came the year after I left. And then but we claim him as an alumni. So it's funny. Nobody believes that he went to McGavick. So one night he was on Jimmy Fallon, and Jimmy Fallon brought this picture from in high school. He's like, oh, yeah, that's when I was at McGavick High School in Nashville and all this other stuff going on. People are like, you weren't lying. I'm like, if I'm going to lie about something, I'm going to lie that I dated Julia Roberts back in high school, not about The Rock going to McGavick, So it's always good that he's our most famous alum right now, even though he didn't graduate. We still claim him, which is fine.
Yeah, I like hearing that. I feel like I've vaguely heard about The Rock going to McGavick before, but while you were in
real
high
quick,
school,
before you go, was the fanny pack picture a McGavick picture?
I don't think so. I think that was taken in Pennsylvania or his freshman year at Miami, one of those, because he looks 30 in that picture, which means he probably was a senior in high school. And so I don't think he looked like that at McGavick, because he had like a little mustache back then, but I don't think so. I'd love to say yes, but I don't think so.
Yeah, so back into the where I was going with that, you're in high school McGavick. I guess we can say with The Rock, but we know you went on, and we'll get into like your media career and all that a little bit later. But when you were first in high school, like, did you have any type of like little media gigs or like exposure early on that kind of led to that?
Zero. I mean, I was playing football and I was a class clown. And I remember a teacher said, somehow, some way, you need to figure out when you get older how to be who you are and get paid for that. I'm like, God, that's the best advice I ever got. It took a while. Once you get into TV and working in sports, I was able to do that, but nothing in high school. I was school president, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like a big TV, or I had plans to do that. I just always thought that it would be a very cool job to get in media, because it didn't feel like work. It felt like you're always, and a guy put it really good one time, when you work in the media, you have the front seat to life. I'm like, man, that's a really cool way to put it, because I can't do an 8-to-5 job. I just can't. I'm not built that way. And I don't know. So, but nothing in high school led into that. Nothing at all. Everybody has the dreams of being an actor or a singer or a comedian. And if I could do it again, I probably would have left and gone to LA right out of high school or something, but I didn't. And so that's where we kind of stand right now. But it was, but nothing in high school, even college, nothing really.
Oh, that was going to be our next question, is like, so you get out of high school, graduate from McGavick. Did you go to college? Where did you go? Did you know what you wanted to do when you got there?
Yeah, I went to I went to junior college, played football, got a scholarship there. I went to Samford, and I was a terrible. I mean, I was a terrible student. I went to class, didn't pay attention. I was out every night of the week in Birmingham. I was like the Rock. I looked 30, never got carded. I left after my freshman year at a 1.25 GPA, and I'll never forget the academic counselor come to me saying, "Hey, you gotta up it up. You got to get it up. You know, you're 1.25." I remember telling her vividly, thinking, "How in the hell did I get a 1.25?" I had no idea how I got that. So back then, though, all you had to do was get 24 hours in a school year. There was no GPA. You just had to get 24 hours. So now you've got to get your hours plus maintain a certain GPA. I would have never made it. So anyway, I ended up leaving Samford. I mean, I had a good time. And then I had something like 27 jobs between leaving Samford and getting my degree at MTSU in 1997, which was in journalism. And I started my career at Channel 2, and then it just took off from there.
So what were those jobs? Some of those 27, name a couple.
One job I was on Jimmy Fallon because it was the worst summer job ever. My mom got me a job with this guy building decks. And true story, I show up, it was off of Franklin Limestone Road in Nashville. I'll never forget it. This guy's name was Archie. I go to build the deck. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, guys. He's already drunk. True story. And we're building steps on the deck, and he's building them like sideways, maybe one nail in that. And so I'm working with him, I don't know, for like 3 hours. And I'm thinking, I got to get out of here. So I sneak around the house, and there's only one way out. I've got to get around his truck, and I'm in a beat up car. So as I'm leaving, I tell him to go to hell, and I drive around him. He starts shooting me, true story, with a nail gun and shooting nails at me. And my car's like ding, 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 ding. So I leave there. I drive to a Pizza Hut. I call my mom, and I said, "This guy's going to kill me." And my mother, in true mother form, says, "Well, did you get the money you were owed for your 3 hours?" I was like, "No, Mom, I'm not going back. He's going to kill me." So jobs like that. I mean, I worked at a grocery store. I was a bouncer. I was a bartender, landscaping. I mean, all the jobs. And finally gets to the point of like, what are you doing with your life? And I had that epiphany where I was like, I'm going to change my life around. I re-enrolled at MTSU. I took 67 hours in a year. I graduated with a degree in journalism. I got an internship at Channel 2. I'm also 28 years old at the time. So I'm not 20 or 21. I mean, I know what I want to do. And then I graduated. I got a job at Channel 2 as a cameraman and just took off from there.
67 hours in a year.
Spring, summer, fall, and spring. So if you go a calendar year plus a semester, then yes. So it all tied in together, man.
I know. I'm literally just sitting here this spring semester with 15 hours, just wishing I wasn't. I couldn't even imagine trying to knock out 60. I'm 20.
How old are you?
20.
Okay. Try being 28. You're married. You've already messed up college once really bad. You just want to get out. You will do anything in your power because I would do I study or I go to this frat party? I'm going to the frat party. Do I study or I go hang out with the sorority girls? I'm going to the sorority girls. Then you go back at 27, 28. It's like frat party or studying. I'm studying because it's all about getting the degree and getting the money then. So you'll learn, you'll get there.
Yeah. With that, so you failed the college once and you have all these jobs and you had the epiphany to re-enroll in the year I wouldn't even imagine of 67 credit hours, but what made you want to pick journalism of all things?
I had seen when I was bartending, we had a guy that would come in every night and he worked at Channel 2's assignment desk editor. It means he assigned stories. And he came in one night and he looked awful. I'm like, "Man, what's going on?" He's like, "Man, I was on the phone with the White House all day. I was trying to get Al Gore. He's coming here. I want to interview with Al Gore." And the more he's talking, I'm thinking, God, what a cool job. I mean, you're talking to the White House. This is 1995. So he says, "Hey, why don't you come visit me tomorrow at work and I'll show you around." I said, "Okay." So I go to visit him at work. It was the day of the Oklahoma City bombing. And I'm standing with him. And all this stuff comes down, the special report from ABC News. And to watch that newsroom go into their mode of covering news, I was like, gosh, this is something else. This is amazing. This is what I want to do. And then that's what I wanted to do because it seemed really cool. It was always changing. It wasn't going the same day, doing the same thing, but it happened to be the day of the Oklahoma City bombing in April of 95. And I was hooked. Unfortunately, I was hooked after that, but to see everything worked, I mean, directors, producers, reporters, bosses, everybody come together. It was really cool, and I wanted to be a part of that.
So if
That's
in
really
90,
cool.
yeah, it is really cool. So that happens in 95, and this might just be a little off topic with how we have these questions, but you just saying that made me wonder. So that's 95, and that's when you realize you want to get into journalism. Did you already have like a media job when 9/11 happened?
Yes, yep. I was a cameraman at Channel 2, and I'll never forget, I was having my daughter, she's getting ready to go to preschool, we're watching the Rugrats, and a friend calls me and says, turn on the TV. I turn it on, I see what was going on. And then back then we had pagers. So I get a pager, 911 called the newsroom. I called the newsroom. They said, come in. We don't know what's going on, but I think a plane's hit the towers. So we went in for like 2 hours trying to figure out what's going on. My boss says, you need to go home and pack for that. You'll be gone for a week. So I went home, grabbed all my stuff, threw it in a big bag, and took off. And that was that day, that Tuesday, that afternoon, metro government downtown started getting on these phone calls that anthrax. There's anthrax, all these buildings were getting evacuated. You know, we're sending crews to DC, you can't fly, so they're driving up there. So we were here. I don't think I went home I went to work. I went back to work at noon on Tuesday. I don't think I got home. I went home and showered Wednesday afternoon, and I showered Friday morning. So I was at work basically for 4 days full time. Crazy, man. But it was one of those things where you working. And so ever since that incident, this is crazy. Every time I go someplace, I have an extra thing of clothes in my car, even to this day, just in case something happens. So I'm prepared. Hopefully nothing ever happens like that again. So I'm good to go. But it was something else. I mean, because everybody was in just work. Nobody complained, and everybody just did their job. It was amazing to see the unity of a lot of people coming together, not only in the newsroom, but just people around everywhere you went. Because at that moment, everybody was mad. I mean, really mad for the next 3 or 4 days. And it took a while for it quieted down too. I'm not sure it ever really quieted down after that, but it definitely, the world changed that day, big time.
So how did you go through college really fast? How did you get in at News 2? Was it like an internship? And then what was that
Yeah.
first job there like?
So everybody was going to work at Channel 4 with Rudy Kalis, everybody. So I called Channel 4 and I talked to somebody over there like, hey, yeah, I mean, he'll call you back. I'm like, God. And so I'm thinking, well, like, nobody watches Channel 2. Nobody goes to Channel 2. So I called him up. This guy was like, yeah, I'm leaving in 2 months, but come over and be the intern. And so I went over there and filled out papers, and because you get credit for that. So that was where my 21 hours came in for the fall semester, because I got 3 hours credit for being an intern, and went over to Channel 2. And so what I knew was, my first day there, a guy said, look, there's one job on TV. There's about 12 jobs behind the scenes. Learn every job. So when your internship is up, they can't get rid of you. So I learned every job. So I became a really good cameraman. So in April of 97, I graduated, I kept my internship going, and they said, hey, I hear you're graduating. And I'm like, yeah, so we want to offer you a job. You can be the editor of the noon show. We're going to pay you $6 an hour. But what it did is it put me on the payroll, gave me insurance through the company. So if I go out and cover, then it was like a Tennessee Oilers game. They just moved here in 97. Well, I can do that. Or I can go cover high school football. I can get, my foot was in the door. You know, I wasn't on air and I wasn't on TV, but my foot was in the door. And from there, man, I just kept going and just kept knocking on the door, kept moving it. So at the time, we did all the Titans or the Oilers preseason games, which transitioned to Titans preseason games. So we did these terrible promos like Bears, Titans, Saturday night. So I started writing these promos and giving them to a promotions director, and he just kept turning them down. And finally, one day he called me up. It was when the Titans were playing the Jaguars in the 99 season, the AFC Championship game, which was on Channel 2. He said, we're going to use your promo. It was a takeoff of the Blair Witch Project. I had a Jaguar helmet. I had a flashlight on there, and I was scared because the Titans were chasing me, and he loved it. And he said, the reason we're going to do this promo is so that you'll stop writing promos, so you'll leave me alone. So we did it and ended up getting nominated for what they call an Alpha Award. It's a big promotion award for ABC, and Channel 2 had never been nominated for that at the time. And the guy's like, all right, you get all the promos. So we kept doing promos, and 3 years later, we won the Alpha Award for a Titans promo. So anyway, what that did was it got me in my creative mode. I didn't want to be a cameraman anymore. I want to do stuff more creative and be on the air. And they had no sports jobs opening. So I said, let me go out and be a guy on the go around town and do fun stuff, go to gyms, delis, opening schools. And my GM at the time was like, that's a fantastic idea. So one thing led to another, and I got the job. And then from there, to fast forward it, I was having fun doing Big Joe on the Go. And 2006, the entire sports team at Channel 2 quit. They all went different places. And then my GM said, hey, I need you to come in and anchor sports on the weekend. I'm like, I don't want to do that. He said, come in, I'll take care of you. So I went in, and it was 2006, and the U.S., the World Cup was going on. And I swear to God, guys, U.S. was playing a country I'd never heard of in the World Cup. And I'm thinking, God, if I've never heard of it, nobody else has. So I did a 3-minute sportscast, more like a weekend update, SNL kind of thing. Did it, had a bunch of jokes. Afterwards, my boss calls me and says, I see him calling my phone. I'm like, oh God, well, I'm in trouble now. Because I went a little too far. Nothing bad, just different from what you would see. And he said, that was the greatest sportscast I've ever seen. I want you to be my sports guy. I was like, and here's what I'm going to pay you. I'm like, all right, I'm in. And that's how I got in sports. But let me tell you what, I had been turned down. I probably sent out between 40 to 50 resume tapes around the country. I got nowhere. I got one guy in Mobile, Alabama, sent me a note and said, we like your enthusiasm, not a fan of your look. I mean, I was like, thank you. At least I know who I am. And so that made me even more determined to get a job in sports and not give it up, because I tell people the only person that's going to stop you is yourself. Right? I mean, I get all these rejection letters. There's nothing in those there's nothing you look at those rejection letters and say, well, Joe, you need to keep on going. You might have a future here. Nobody believed in me. I got so many doors slammed in my face. It wasn't even funny, but I never quit. And so it's hard to beat the person who never quits. And so I took advantage of every opportunity and just, again, learned every job. I can shoot the camera, I can edit, I can write, I can produce. They couldn't get rid of me. And it just took off from there. And so I was really lucky. Hard work goes a long way, boys. Just refuse to be outworked and out hustled, and you'll get there.
Yeah, I love that as just like a staple in life. Just refuse to be out hustled.
Yeah.
And so, you started out as the cameraman, and then you do these sports promos and stuff. When you first started out as a cameraman, you played football in college, so obviously you have to have some type of affinity for sports. But
yeah.
Did you always know, like, when you started out, you go to get that journalism degree at MTSU, and then you start as a cameraman? Did you know you wanted to end up in sports, or when you started doing those promos, is that when you were kind of like, you wanted to be a sportscaster?
Right. Good question. So in mid 90s, that's when the ESPN2 started, the Stuart Scotts and the Rich Eisens, like, God, this is a lot of fun. It's not traditional sportscast. Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann were doing things. Like, I want to be a part of that. And then you found out how hard it's to crack that door. And there's only a limited number of jobs there. It'd be a lot of fun. So you just find a way. If the front door's open, you go to the side door. Side door's not open, you go to the back door, or go to, you'll find a way to get in there. So I wanted to do that. But the more I started getting into telling stories and going around and seeing people in events and hosting things, the sports thing was still there, but the community thing started growing more and being hyper local. And you go to high schools and they really appreciate you coming out there and things like that. Gyms and events and openings of ballparks and stuff all comes together. And so my love for sports broadcasting started going down just a tad bit. I still enjoyed it. My thing though is I wanted to get in sports broadcasting and be completely different. Right when I started, I had a consultant tell me to shave my goatee and mustache. I said, I'm not doing that because this is me. Well, you won't get far. Okay, let me write your name down too, so when I do get far, I'll remember who you are. So I just kept on marching the beat of my own drum. And sports is fun. So here's what I did. I treated sports broadcast. I want to be a sportscaster. I always said, I've got you for 3 to 4 minutes, right? So you give me 3 or 4 minutes of your day. You're tired, you're pissed off, you're mad at somebody. So come to me, let's have some fun with things. And I always took it that way to make your 3 or 4 minutes to completely, anybody could read anybody could read highlights. Anybody. Lipscomb Belmont, here's a 3-pointer, 2-pointer. Belmont wins by 4. I went out and do things and I would show people in the crowd, just people like, oh, it looks like that John Lovitz is here tonight. You find somebody who looks like somebody and have fun with that. So you're not really watching highlights. You're having a good time and just kind of making that job completely different. And that's where I came up with the idea. I don't know if you ever saw it for the stick figure sportscast I did. So when the Titans are playing on TV on another network, you cannot show their highlights because of broadcasting rules. Same way goes for the NCAA tournament. So like when Tennessee's playing in the NCAA tournament on another channel, or that window's still open, I can't show highlights. So I would go out and I would get stick figures, I'd write, and I'd do highlight stick figures. I got nominated 8 times for doing that for an Emmy Award. Only won once, right? But I got nominated 8 times for doing that. And that's what people remember. You just got to be different. Don't do the same old thing. And I tell people all the time, find your own voice and do things completely different. If you only make yourself laugh, fantastic. If you're having the best time, people gravitate towards people who are having a good time. Like, I want to be part of that. And so that's how I try to do sports broadcasting now. And I hate to say this now. I mean, it's all watch local, national. It's boring. I mean, and that's another thing too. I was watching, I'm not going to name what channel it was the other night, Channel 2, but they were doing they did Roger Goodell's press conference from the last week's Super Bowl, right? I can get that press conference on my phone, on ESPN, I can't get the story of that dude at Cane Ridge, the best high school basketball player in America, who's going to play the McDonald's All-American game. Give me that story. Or give me the soccer player who's blown out both knees and who's making a comeback. All those stories are out there. But sports people have gotten so lazy, TV people, they won't go do it. So you're rehashing highlights that I've already seen. And that's like, no, don't do that. And so that's where my critical part comes in. Just be different, because people are tuning out TV, local news all the time for things like that. So don't be lazy. I can go down the list for you. San Diego, Vegas, Phoenix, St. Louis, West Palm Beach. I'm leaving some like Tampa, Detroit. Those are all St. Louis, who all have let go of sports departments and TV stations because those TV guys and girls, they're lazy. They just go and press a satellite feed and they pull it down. I wouldn't pay for that. I wouldn't pay your salary for that. Go out and enterprise and be different. Get off your butt and make a difference in the world. And that way you'll stick around longer and you feel better about yourself. And I know I'm on a tangent here. I'll apologize. So high school football to me, right, is the purest form of any sport. And I know you can say soccer, baseball, but for me it is. Mike, Keith, and I've had this talk 36 times about somehow, some way, if you're in sports broadcast, if you're in the sports world, stay grounded to high school football. And Mike Keith was the PA announcer at BGA up to a couple of years ago. You don't have to do that, but he's still involved in what high school football is, how much fun it is. So to me, I've always said in TV, our biggest footprint was high school football. Now, the consultant and the boss are, well, the weather is. No, it's not. I get weather anywhere. I'm giving you a unique football coverage of high school. You park a van at Lebanon High School on a Friday night by the gate, and there's 3,000 people coming in. They're seeing your news van. When they see the reports on TV, they're going to go home and watch. And you do that every Friday night for 13, 14 Fridays every fall. Then go and cover high school basketball, just something else to do. You build a following, and it stays with you forever. I mean, it's, and I send notes to high school football coaches all the time. I'll send Twitter notes. I'll send them letters. Hey, man, hope you're doing good. Things are going well. Keep that contact up. Just be different. It's more than just a job, man, of doing your 3 minutes on TV. Let's have some fun with it and just get involved in that world, and you will not regret a single second of it.
I absolutely love how you went on the little high school football thing there, which I'll talk to in a second. So I do enjoy that so much, because if you did play high school football, like, just even, I'm sure you still, like, those are some of the fondest memories you can have, is playing high school football with the same group of guys every Friday night. And so I just wanted to touch on that for a second, because high school football really is just a different feeling. But the biggest thing I took from that tangent was that, like, a big staple for you and how you sportscast is just being different. And I know you touched on this when we talked about high school, about being the class clown. And so I'm wondering, is that something you've tried tying into your sportscasting to be different, is like to bring that like comedy and relatableness to sportscasting? Or do you find yourself being more different along the lines of being more localized with like the basketball player, the soccer player, these high school football coaches?
It's the answer is both, because you can still do both. For example, Predators hockey, right? I had this joke the whole time. Every time the Predators got into a fight on the ice, I'd always say, look, it's a Dubin family reunion. And that joke worked for years, right? So you're being different in your highlights and the things you do with that, with basketball, whatever. Just be different with that. And then at the same time, you need to go out and enterprise these stories. So you need to go out and find really cool stories. Like a cool story I found out 3 years ago was a story that I worked on for like 3 days nonstop. There was a lady here in Middle Tennessee. She was overweight, like by 200 pounds. So she said, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to go for 2 years and I'm going to work hard. I'm going to run a marathon in November of 2018 in Nashville. So she trains. She's 3 weeks out from running the marathon. She gets killed coming back from Panama City in a car wreck. So her best friend's devastated. So they take a picture of her and they get that big head picture, you hang on the wall, whatever. And her friends, she has 26 friends run a mile with her, with that picture, and they run. So the 26 mile, it's 26.2 miles. At the 26 mile, everybody comes back around and all 26 people run to the finish line together, right? So you're thinking, well, that's not really a sports story. You know what it is? It's a sports human interest story that I will never forget covering. Just the emotion of seeing that stuff. And it's local and it's our backyard. And people see that and they can, man, that's a really good story. So you've got to put the sports broadcasting part with the highlights and everything else, but also go out and enterprise stories and care about things, show the different side of things. Not everybody's a football fan. I get that. Everybody's a Predators, a hockey fan. I get all that. But there are a lot of great stories that are out there that we should tell. And so you want to be different, but you want to be unique in your own way and still tell stories that get you going. And another one, like for example, was in Fort Campbell, which is in the Nashville viewing area. They had one of the players on the team. His dad was the first Fort Campbell soldier killed in combat during the Iraq War, 03, 04, right in there. So kid grew up without a father. So he goes to this. So other soldiers adopted this kid. And in the state high school football game in 2008, he has like 36 tackles, destroys another team. They win, intercepts a pass at the 2-yard line. They win the game. I got to tell the story about these people coming together for this kid. He got on CNN. CNN picked my story up. It goes there. And to see that the emotion and the hard work you put into something on that scale where it's honoring somebody else is really cool, man. So some think that it's a job you go on and you just roll off highlights and you sit around and you go to dinner. You can do that. Those jobs, those people losing those jobs left and right. You go out and you become a good storyteller, a really good storyteller. It doesn't take much. Just don't screw a story up. You stick around for a while. So I try to do 50-50. Tell really good stories and have a really good on-air presence and enjoy yourself, and like what you do and don't second guess what you do. Because if you start second guessing what you're doing and then you lose sight of what you want to be and who you are, and it's just no fun after that.
I resonate with that so much as a viewer of local news and news in general, because like you said earlier, like I can see so much on my phone. Like I don't,
Yeah.
I follow those Nashville severe weather people on Twitter, and
Yeah.
I literally that's where I get my weather. Like I'm not, if there's a bad storm coming through, that's what I'm scrolling through. I'm not watching Channel 2 or Channel 4. You know what I mean? So it's like I just think that storytelling in that setting is so important, and finding interesting things and heartwarming things that people can relate to, because we just see so much, we get so much information instantaneously.
And that's
Well, you
really
do. And that's the thing too, is like, I'll tell you a story one time, like 2015, the Pope came to America, right? So I'm with the Titans. I'm thinking, how can I tie this in? It's, you know what? I'm going to ask every Titan player, well, not everyone, but the ones I talked to, if the Pope came to Nashville, where would they take the Pope to dinner? And like half the people I talked to have no idea who the Pope was. And Chance Warmack's like, wait, is it that little dude with the big hat? And so you get this different emotions and answers from these guys. It was a lot of fun. Like, who would you vote? Who would you vote for mayor of Nashville, the Titans team? And the answers you get are just really cool. So look, I can go out all day, hear Mike Vrabel talk about how tough it is, and Kevin Byard about how well we got to play. Man, that is all just bilge to me. And look up the word bilge, is B-I-L-G-E. Look it up, you'll understand. It's just, it doesn't hit me anymore. I'm like, I know you got to play better and I know you're going to win. Show me the emotion of what you are and who you are. And Those are things you just got to be a little bit different in your approach, and let the other people tell the story for you. Let other people tell the story and have fun with them and just guide them along that journey. And you can do it with the Preds, high schools. It doesn't matter where you are. Just have some questions and be willing to have fun with it.
So what is like, I guess I've always wondered, I don't know if people do, but I have, what is the relationship like between news stations? Like News Channel 2 and News 4 and News 5, like, are you guys cool with each other? Is there a rivalry there? What's that kind of like?
There is, for the most part, we cover the same story. I mean, you go out, like, for example, in August, Titans training camp, you do the same stories. You try to find different things that are going on out there. But for the most part, if Channel 5 needed a battery, here's a battery, if you're out there, who's that guy over there? For the most part, it's really good. Now, when it comes to exclusive stories like the lady in the marathon who passed away, you're not getting that. You'll see that when it airs. And that should be the same way at all the stations, but I kind of approach it like in life. I mean, if you got broke down the interstate, I see you in a Channel 5 car and I'm at Channel 4, I'm going to help you out because I'd like for you to help me out if that comes to the point. But when I get those Fort Campbell stories, when I get the story like the lady who passed away and other things that are going on, then I know you'll see it on the air. But for the most part, it's really, really good. Now, there are some who really take it to the next level, who don't talk to you and stand away from you. There's a few in broadcasting here in Nashville locally that still do that I maybe said 3 words to, but that's because they want to be that way, and that's fine. Always took it as being insecure in a way. I mean, if you kick my butt on a story, I applaud you. I've sent emails to dozens of reporters. Hey, man, great job. Nice story. Hopefully I'll get it next time, because it's good to compliment things. If you hold it in to you, if somebody beats you on a story, you're like, oh, man, there was one time when I was at Channel 2, it had something to do with Darrell Waltrip. I forget what it was. And I called Darrell Waltrip, couldn't call me back. Then at 10 o'clock, I forget what the story was. The lead story on Channel 5 was Darrell Waltrip doing this. But Darrell Waltrip and Hope Hines at Channel 5 were best friends. So I was going to crack that shell. I tried, but I was like, you know what? I did everything I could to get that story, but you're not going to beat a relationship. That's why I go back to relationships. Talking with Mike Keith, you form those relationships. So something goes on, and that instant you call someone up and say, hey, man, what's happening? You mind talking to me? And 9 times out of 10, they'll talk to you, and it's pretty good. So, but with the station relationships, it's not bad. I think it's about a 9 out of 10.
So it's pretty good, but I know like a couple of times you've kind of maybe, like with you said saw a boring story and you're like Channel 2. So I mean, do you have like any kind of like low key beef with Channel 2, or do you just like picking at them?
I just don't like when you walk to the editing room and you press record on a press conference that you could see that happened 6 hours earlier, that you can get anywhere. I mean, what are you giving me? What are you giving me that I'm not getting off my phone? I mean, that's the way. This wasn't a problem 25 years ago, obviously. But why can't you go out and do an enterprise story? I mean, we got all kind of cool stories that are happening here. So I just don't get, you rolling at 3 o'clock and you got 60 seconds, and you do a sport. I don't get it. And I don't watch that much anymore. But when I do, I see the same thing. And you wonder why viewers are tuning out. You're not giving them anything. So why can't you go out at 1 o'clock and find a bowler, who's bowled, 300 games? I mean, I'd rather see that than a Roger Goodell press conference about whatever he was talking about. Well, I mean, go ahead and tell me a story in a minute 15. That's really cool. And then, people share that story and go on and on. That's the way I approach things and wanted to do it. But I'm not a fan of how things are. There's a lot of laziness in sports broadcasting.
Did that kind of go into your decision of because you left Channel 2 for 4, correct?
I left 2 to go to ESPN Radio 102.5 The Game.
Yeah, got you. So did that kind of have something to do with it? Like I'm not trying to ask you to like dump on your old employer or whatever, but like, did those kind of lazy-ish practices of not really trying to enterprise stories and stuff lead to you?
Well, I had a boss at Channel 2 at the time was like, you can't hold that story for 6:20 that happened at 10 o'clock, don't tweet it out. I'm like, this is back in 2010, 2011. I'm like, this guy doesn't get it. And plus he was a bonehead anyway, my boss at Channel 2, and he proved himself to be a bonehead down the line because he got fired and now he's out of TV. So then I go to radio, then I go back into Channel 4 2015, and I wanted to tell stories and to have fun with it, but at the same time, I didn't think with Channel 4 we were doing enough for the community. We were not doing community. So I got on the morning show. And what started that was I just got tired of covering the Titans. I got tired of waiting on Taylor Lewan to come out with some smart ass answer. So one day I'm on a deadline. He comes out of the shower. He's like, I ain't talking to y'all today. Then he goes, plays grab ass with Ben Jones in the corner for 10 minutes when he could have given us a couple interviews and be done with it. And I said, I'm not wasting my life or stressing out over a 24-year-old kid. And I want to get out. And that's how I left. And I wasn't going to do it anymore. I wasn't going to stand over there and do that. I mean, God bless the guys like Jim White and other people. That's their job. I get all of it. I didn't want to do that. So there was kind of a collision, perfect storm of want to get out of sports. I saw, because my time in sports was getting cut from 6 minutes to 4 minutes to 2 minutes. I'll never forget a quick story. My time kept getting cut at 10 o'clock, 6 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes. And finally, I had a producer said, well, you're going to have to come fight for your time at 10 o'clock. And I said, let me ask you this. Am I still getting paid the same salary? And he was like, well, absolutely you are. I said, then I'm good. I don't have anything for 10. He's like, well, hold on. Let's talk about this. And I was like, don't screw with me. Let me do my thing. I know what I'm doing. Let me do it. If you have any criticism, let's talk about it. But don't tell me to fight for my time. I'm not doing that. And so anyway, long story short, I got on the morning show because I want to do stuff in the community, because I felt like as a TV station, you need to do more community stuff. And not a single TV station does that now. Did what I did. Go out and tell cool stories, because consultants have told them that nobody cares, when that's completely wrong. Consultants say nobody's got attention span over a minute. Don't do a story longer than a minute. Don't go this area, that area. It's terrible. Consultants have ruined it. Let's go out and just tell stories and be different. What happens and works in Kansas City and Denver, not going to work in Nashville, and vice versa. So, and then COVID hit, and then I had a boss at Channel 4 who was like, well, we need more kind of serious COVID stories. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go out and show you that small business who is fighting for their life and need help, or that dry cleaners, or that new company, or wherever, or a candy store that I'm going to show those people who are struggling and fighting and staying in business because people are supporting them. That's what people care about. And we did a great job. Justin Beasley and I did a great job of telling those stories every single day. And so I just got tired of the consultants like, well, nobody cares about those stories. I totally disagreed. I even wrote a story about it for where I'm now at Main Street, Nashville, about counting all the red cars. When my son had an assignment when he was in third grade, his teacher said, I want you to go out this afternoon and count all the red cars. So what do? You go find red cars. So we counted like 28 red cars that day. I applied that to positive stories, right? If you want to find positive stories, you will look for positive stories. If you want to find negative stories, you'll look for negative stories. I choose to only find positive stories. Consultants didn't like that because they felt that nobody cared in this time of COVID, and they're completely wrong.
Okay, so
go ahead, Kyran. You're good.
Oh yeah, okay. So just kind of mapping out what you've laid out. You get into the media, you're the cameraman, and then you find your kind of niche in sports broadcasting, but then you kind of get tired of that. But even while you're in the sportscasting, you kind of find a way to bring to light the different stories you can find as a sportscaster. And then you get tired of that, and then you're doing the morning show, and you're doing like the breath of fresh air. If you want to watch something super sad, super depressing, CBS This Morning every 7 a.m., you can go watch that.
Yeah.
So do you think all along, maybe even when you were sports wasn't what you wanted to do, just wherever you were at, you really wanted to just bring that breath of fresh air of finding good local stories that people wanted to hear, instead of just something you could hit record on, or look up something sad if you wanted to?
That's a great question. And what happened was, when I saw them started to take my time away from sports at 6 to 10 o'clock, when weather would go over and like, we got to take 2 minutes from your weather went over, it showed me that they didn't really care about what was going on in the sports world. And in 2018, our boss, we had 10 minutes for high school football on a Friday night. Our boss came to us and said, hey, I'm going to cut you guys in half. It's the back half of the newscast. People are tuning out. People tune out the back half of the newscast anyway. So they were taking my time from me, and I was giving nothing. You take my time, I'm getting nothing back, right? I'm getting told that Nobody's watching. We're going to put time over there. So the first Friday night, they took our time away from us. And I kid you not, I watched in front of the TV. I was at Channel 4. I said, what story did they took my time away from me? What story are they going to run? They ran a damn story about a turtle getting lost in a school in New Jersey, right? That's what I lost my time on. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Consultants have ruined news. Corporations hiring consultants have ruined news. I'm not going to work on a ship that's sinking, right? I'm going to find my own life vest, get out there and find a place that embraces free, positive thought, hard work. And I've got that at Main Street Nashville. I mean, I got a streaming show in the morning on 17 different platforms. I get the right columns. I got a podcast. I mean, I'm in heaven now. I've got a boss who says, you know what? You go do you. We hired you for you. It's a boss that lives here in Nashville and enjoys it. And so until television, I had dreams, guys. I'd have been a sports. I could have stayed at Channel 4 sportscaster forever, right? But what is the challenge for me? What's the challenge? If you're cutting my time, and what's the challenge that you're going to get from me? There's not one there. You know, let me go out and fill the 5 minutes with great fun, different stories, and treat every sportscast like it's a weekend update on SNL back when it used to be funny. Those were good times. So I saw everything changing and evolving, and not in a way that I really liked. And so I'm going to get out, create my own happiness. And that's what I did. And I feel I haven't been this happier in my professional life ever. And we're now going on 26 years in media. There's no stress. I go out and tell positive stories every day. You know, and I might dabble back in sports broadcasting, but there's a few things out there that I'm working on. But if I get back in and I freelance, I'm not changing. I'm going to still do the sportscast I did 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to give you something to take away from it. And the greatest compliment I got was, I had a guy I worked with. He said, you know what? My wife doesn't like sports, but you make her laugh. So we stay up and watch you at 10 o'clock. I'm like, fantastic. That's how it goes. But the consultants have ruined so much in news that I wasn't going to work on a sinking ship.
Where do you think that this has come from? Because it seems like just news in general, local, national, everything has just changed so much and not for the better. Where do you think these consultants are coming from? What kind of ideas do they have? Why are they doing this?
Well, they do these research things that say people only want hard news. Only want hard news. We want hard news. We want the crime around the corner and all that. Oh, great. I mean, there is a place for that newscast, right? But not for 30 minutes. And I think consultants take the easy way out because they know that if you just preach crime and murder and blood and wrecks, that there's sort of that Jerry Springer, Maury Povich audience that will watch no matter what. But there's a lot of people that are turned off by that and that want to see decent, good community, great stories, positive stories that are happening out there. You can do it in a 30-second sound bite and video. You can do all that stuff. Just a lot of laziness going on that. So the consultants have done that. Now, man, you watch it and it's just like, what are you doing? I mean, I sat in those meetings where the news managers had no clue what was going on. And, reporters getting stories out of the paper. I was like, this is not how there's no enterprising going on there. And it just, I don't know, I lost a lot of hope and faith in where things are going overall in the news business. And I haven't seen, again, I don't watch that much anymore. And, my boss at Channel 4, who's long gone, thank God, he was terrible, told me that they've given up on the 10 o'clock news. I'm like, why? He's like, Netflix, we don't care anymore at 10. I'm like, did you tell your 10 o'clock crew this? No, they'll find out eventually. Huh? You're the boss. You're telling me you're going to just capsize the 10 o'clock show because of Netflix? Go tell them. So, the streaming stuff has played a big deal in it. But again, it's the consultants have just made this. And if you're a news director, all right, let's take you, Trey, you're a news director, right? And you make bad decisions, you're going to be fired. Well, you bring a consultant in, he makes all the bad decisions. You're like, hey, I'm just doing what the consultant told me. You keep your job. There's no accountability down the line. No accountability at all. That's why people are looking out for new things like I'm doing on Main Street Media, like your podcast. I mean, we're looking for good. We can find this stuff now. It doesn't have to be on the 10 o'clock news. I can find your podcast. I can find things I've done, other things that you can find on your phone and search good, positive stories that you want to find out. And TV is yet to figure that out. And why more TV stations aren't doing this podcast stuff. And, we use StreamYard and bring guests on every morning. It's fantastic. And why more TV stations aren't going off the grid doing this, I have no idea.
This is just in my opinion, like with how big podcasts and more long form conversations are, shows that those 1 minute clips, I don't know. I think people crave more conversation, more explanation,
They do. That's the whole thing. People are like, oh, the screaming heads on ESPN. Well, sometimes there's good, or Fox Sports, or whatever, or CNN, Fox, whatever your taste is. I don't care. But sometimes there's good information on there you can see. And that's the thing with podcasts. A lot of people love Joe Rogan. A lot of people hate Joe Rogan, but you're going to listen to him. If you like him, you're going to find this stuff out and see the things, because now you can cater to your different tastes and what's going on. And so nobody's sitting around watching the 10 o'clock news anymore. You're talking about the Nashville severe weather guys. What those guys have done should be page one of a social media book. Yes, how they've taken 100%. That and run with it and had fun with it and get information. That should be page one of how to do it in social media. That's where this is going. And always, we always laugh about Facebook. Facebook is massively powerful, massively powerful. It's not going anywhere for a long time. And then so people are reaching out. You can find your news there and good positive stuff. So the more that people are searching that stuff out, it's going to be there, and the less they're going to watch local news.
You've talked a lot about kind of what it seems like the rise and the fall of being on like TV and maybe even being a media personality in Nashville, with these consultants coming in and then these news channels kind of tanking a little bit with the rise of social media, podcasts. Meanwhile, Nashville's growing like crazy. So what I'm kind of asking is, like, since you've been in the media game in Nashville for so long, and you've seen these stations tank and then social media and podcasts rise, like, what has it been like being a personality in Nashville, and how much has it changed?
Well, it has to be, usually you'd go out before I'd get, recognized everywhere I'd go, which is part of the job. It's fine. People are great. They're friendly, but so many people are moving here. And so that was the cause for my boss a couple years ago at Channel 4. It's like, there's 100 people moving here a day. They don't know who Dimitri Kaladimos was. All they know is what they see now. Let's forge and go forward. And I understand all that. But you also, in the time where people are moving here, a lot of families are moving here. Like my son plays high school football. At 6 o'clock, I'm either his practice or watching his game. So I see what I'm going to see on the phone later on. That's why social media has become so important. That's why these TV stations need to put a lot of their content on there, but they haven't yet figured out how to monetize it. That's the problem. So you see all these new people moving in here, and it's really caused a crux where you do coverage. You got so many people moving to Murfreesboro. So you go down and do all Murfreesboro stories. Well, if I just move to Murfreesboro, I know I want to watch that. But if I move to Hendersonville or Clarksville, I probably don't care about Murfreesboro. So there's all these different things that are going on. TV landscape's changing like never before. And I don't know where it ends. I don't know where it stops. I don't know where it's going to go, but I know when it keeps going like that, and TV stations need to figure out what's happening. And that's why I put a reporter assigned to Murfreesboro, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Dixon, whatever. Every day have them turn a story. Hey, let's go to our Dixon reporter. Doesn't have to be long, 2 minutes, minute and a half. Just show that you're there and you're concerned about what's happening in the community. And then people start watching. Oh, there's that Channel 4 guy. He's doing a story. I live in Dixon. I'm going to watch tonight. It's just keep reinventing yourself. It's not that difficult. Don't go 2 minutes from the TV station and do a story about a pothole. That's not affecting anybody. Get out in the community. And that's why when I live sports, I want to get out in the community and tell these stories. There's some wonderful stories all around Middle Tennessee, man. And they're not being told. And I'm going to tell as many of those as I can.
You have a favorite story from maybe Big Joe on the Go, or anything that you've kind of done? I know you talked about that the runner before, but just a place in Nashville you've been, or a person that you've covered in Nashville.
This is so much like a sports story. I had golfed at a golf tournament one time, in a celebrity golf tournament. My joke was, I always like to see people's faces when I walk up, because you're playing like Vince Gill and whoever else, and then there's me. And every time it just disappoints people. They're like, oh God, So I show up this golf tournament one day and I have to golf with this guy named Mike Ridings. And Mike's in the golf cart and he's like, oh God, it's you. But he was having fun with me. So we're golfing this tournament. Mike gets out and he's short. I'm like, why is he short? Well, Mike had both his legs were blown up in Vietnam and he was a scratch golfer. And I spent a whole like 4 hours with him golfing one day. He was fantastic. I said, you know what, Mike? I'm gonna come out and tell a story about how you became a scratch golfer. He's like, you won't believe this story if I tell you. So I went out, he was working at Forest Crossings in Franklin. He let's go on the course. And he was an Army medic, stepped on a rice paddy, blew both his legs up, was in a hospital in Oakland for a year. He almost died. He played music, moved to Nashville and got married. Great guy. And he was just depressed. So he went one time, drove by a golf place. He's like, I want to golf. And instead of the guy at the golf shop laughing at him, the guy said, yeah, we're going to do this. You need to golf. So it saved his life. So Mike tells me the story, man. I aired on a Sunday night. He's just great, so gracious, and talks about how golf saved his life. And here's a guy that walks out, on, I know it's not politically correct to say, but 2 stubs, and he hits the ball 250 yards down the middle of the fairway. He's like, top that, big boy. And I can't. I mean, he was so wonderful. So I aired this story on a Sunday night on Channel 2, and my phone rings after the show, and it's this producer for ESPN, and says, man, I'm speechless over that story. Do you mind if I take that story to the next level? I'm like, God, no, not at all, man. Long story short, ESPN got with them, and his dream was to golf at St. Andrews. He became the first disabled golfer to ever golf at St. Andrews. His best friend was going to go with him and golf over there. His best friend died of a heart attack a month before they left. So this story, it was on the ESPYs, and it took it to a whole nother level. And I'll never forget, Mike called me and he was crying. He's like, hey, I got to give you credit somehow. I'm like, man, I'm just a conduit, man. I just told a story and I got the reaction I wanted. They took it to the next level. And he's like, well, I got to do things I never thought I would do because you took an interest in me. I'm like, man, you're the story. It's my pleasure. So a year later, he meets Jack Nicklaus. He's at a celebrity golf tournament. I mean, great time. And about 6 weeks after, he calls me back up again. I'm like, hey, man, what are you thanking me for this time? We laughed. And he said, I just want to let you know that I've got brain cancer and I got 3 months to live. And he lasted about 6 weeks and he died. And that conversation with them of him telling me how I changed his life and made his life complete, and then his daughter's reaching out to me. That's something I'll never forget, man. And it was just, I didn't tell the story for all that. I just wanted to tell a story on this amazing man who just really opened my eyes to the world. And he's a guy that just got off his butt, man, and wanted to change his life, and he made it happen. And I'll never forget him as long as I live. That's the guy. That's the most important story I think I've ever told.
It's incredible. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's almost speechless right there.
Yeah. I mean, I've got another question or two, but I'm like, wow.
Sure.
So I've got one more, and then Kyran probably has one more, and then we'll ask about a little bit more about Main Street, and then we'll be done. But my last question was, spill the beans on Logan Ryan.
Oh, okay. So Logan Ryan, extremely rude and condescending. So it was 2018, and then an open week, and he's doing this pet adoption. And his agent reaches out to him and says, hey, Logan's a big fan. BS. He had no idea who I was. And Logan was to come on the show today and talk about his charity. And then that Saturday, he's got a big event in Antioch where they're spaying and neutering pets. All right, no problem. So Justin Beasley goes out there. He's the only reporter. It's pouring down rain. Justin's out there for like 3 hours. And Justin comes back and says, it's a good story, but Logan never said thank you. And it just, all that was going on, and Justin's a great dude. I'm thinking, man, all right, he's coming on the show tomorrow night. So we move our show around, the Sunday night show that nobody watches, which is an awful, awful Sunday night TV show, sports show. They're all awful. And ours was especially awful. And he comes in, he's late, he's condescending, he's a smart ass. And when we're done, he just walks out. And I said, that, not even a thank you, not even a single thank you. And just the way he did that, and come to realize that it wasn't just with us, he did that for a lot of people. So, and then, there was some in the media like, why don't the Titans re-sign Logan Ryan? And I'm thinking, they're paying $10 million. He can't cover a slot guy. I could do that for $100,000 a year. This guy's an ass. And he was. And the more people started seeing it, somebody made that, that condescending comment about Tennessee fans don't get it. After we adopted all those dogs and did all these stories for him, and he's going to call all of us and say, we don't care. I mean, get out of here. And then I see him on the stage, the Walter Payton thing. I'm like, because he's on the stage, that award to me is a little less because he got not just a little less because he's all for show. And that's why I couldn't stand it. Exactly. It all started with, look, I don't ask for a lot, but a simple thank you sometimes goes a long way. Hey, man, thank you. There's a lot of other guys have done that. I mean, a lot of other guys. We covered the Taylor Lewan. He did the hurricane benefit for Houston, and we came out on a Sunday afternoon. Hey, man, thank you for coming out here. I know you're busy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all we need.
Yep.
So thank you. Nothing else. And Logan Ryan never did that. I know it's petty, but it showed me who he was. And when he made that comment, we all saw who he was.
It's so hard to follow up the story about Mike and then the spilling the beans on Logan.
Yeah.
But just like a kind of like, we're towards the end of and wrapping up and stuff. And so, you've been nominated for, several Emmys. You've won
20.
Yeah.
There you go.
20. Yeah. Shout yourself out there. And you've won three. And, with that, the story about Mike reaching the ESPYs and then even just being able to meet Mike himself, I was just wanting to know, like, what stands among the rest of, like, some of your favorite career achievements, or if you kind of don't care much about the achievements and the people you meet are the achievements. But, yeah, just talk a little bit about that.
I think the awards are nice because they recognize your hard work, and you get nominated 20. I've lost the first 10 or 11. And so it became a joke after that. But we all, if they say, oh, I don't care about the award, they do. We all care about the awards, but it's the journey along the way with the mic and the lady who passed away. I never got to meet her doing the marathon. But then the Fort Campbell, the kid at the Fort Campbell soldier. I mean, the little stories like that, they really stay with you for so long. But the Mike story, he's the one because how it started and just how I learned a lot about myself on that of, who is this guy? Who's he think he is? And he gets out of the car and he's walking on two stubs and just a fantastic, beautiful man that I miss every day. I know I'm leaving out a story or two along the way. And I'm leaving out moments like, going to Super Bowl with the Titans in '99, Stanley Cup ride, 2017, going to the AFC Championship game 2 years ago, and it was 8 degrees in Kansas City and our equipment froze, and just all the things that happen along the way that you don't get to see behind the scenes, and the fun and the people you get to meet. And and there's things that happen like at Titans which stand out, like we showed on a Wednesday practice the Titans, and Malarkey was the coach. I remember the New Orleans game where Mariota rolled one way and reversed the other way and hit Anthony Fasano in the corner of the end zone. They won the game in overtime. I showed that play at practice on a Wednesday. It was an open part of the practice, and I showed that. And I'll never forget, the next week, I'm shooting another video, and then I see Malarkey come walking up in my camera. He said, hey, can you turn it off? I need to talk to you. I'm like, okay. He said, if you don't mind showing this stuff again, because we were not going to run that play to win the game because we saw your video on Channel 4. And we thought the Saints might see that video as well. I'm thinking, there's no way in hell Sean Payton is watching a Channel 4 sportscast to see this crazy tight end throwback play you're going to run. And for me, that's a moment that just stands out in the world of broadcasting in my career of all that. It's an odd moment. It's just an odd moment for me. So I've got a lot of good stories, a lot of very weird, surreal, odd moments in my career, none of which I would ever change.
I mean, that is definitely a fact. Just sitting here and listening, there have been times where, like, I just find myself lost just looking at you talk because some of these stories have just been so cool to listen to. And I'm really glad it seems like we've covered a lot of different parts of your career. until now. And so before we really wrap up, we definitely want to talk some more about Main Street, because that's what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever you said earlier you have a boss who kind of lets you do you, and you have your podcast and stuff, is Main Street, talk about how it got started, but just to make a comparison here, is it almost like a Barstool Nashville? They kind of employ personalities to nothing like that.
We got 15 newspapers around Middle Tennessee, and they're just community newspapers, and they're really popular, and they got a huge reach. And so I have a blog that for some odd reasons kind of popular, and I don't know why, just writing stories. And so I would send him notes. I'd be like, hey man, put this in the paper. I don't want any money for it, but one thing led to another, and he's like, hey, I'm getting a lot of response off your articles. If you ever leave Channel 4, let's talk. And so I left Channel 4, and he's like, hey, how about doing a streaming TV show? You still write for me? And so that's where it started at Main Street, Nashville, and it just took off from there. And I got to tell you, I've been overwhelmed. I was reading, before I came on, I was reading an email from a guy who, I wrote a story about traffic and how people are telling you around Nashville now, how to get from point A to point B. They're always saying, it's about 15 minutes from here. Well, that's what we told people 30 years ago. Now it's like 55 minutes to go 15 minutes. And so he was just commenting about that story, but I've never gotten the response I get now that I got on TV. I mean, I get people emailing me all the time about stories and how it touched their lives. And I'll leave you the real quick story, how I know I made the right move. I wrote a story. My belt broke, right? Just a stupid belt, leather belt. It broke the day before my daughter graduated from nursing school back in May. And I'm thinking, man, I got to get a new belt. When did I buy this belt? Well, I bought that belt the day my son graduated from pre-K. And then a month later, my mother passed away. So my son graduates, I bury my mother, I go through all these changes in my life, and that same belt. I get the same belt, and then my daughter graduates, it breaks the day before. And I'm like, I've had this belt, just a stupid belt. So I'm at Baja Burrito in Murfreesboro. This lady walks up to me and says, hi, are you Big Joe? And I'm like, she's an older lady. I said, yes, ma'am. She goes, the article you wrote about not throwing your belt away touched me. I said, well, thank you so much. She's like, here's why. My husband passed away last year. He's got like 40 pairs of shoes. And we were married like 55 years. And my kids say, Mom, get rid of those shoes. And I said, I don't want to, because those are the shoes that Dad had when you graduated high school or college, you had a baby. And your article made me realize that I don't need to get rid of those shoes. So thank you. And then she was gone. And I'm thinking, good Lord, man, I write that stuff. I don't think anybody reads it. And how it just resonated with her and how it made her decision to keep these very important shoes around. Then I knew the good Lord's telling me, Joe, you made the right move. And that's where it was.
Joe, I just want to say from Trey and I that this has been an amazing episode of Victory Monday. Just all the stories, and definitely you can tell how passionate you are with Nashville and getting real stories to the people instead of just seeing the lazy repetitiveness of the news channels now. And, if there's one thing I'm sure a lot of people can't stand, it's just laziness and lack of accountability.
Yep.
So I'm so glad. Yeah. So I'm so glad that we were able to have you on. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we log off of here?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Anytime you can talk about things you're passionate about. And sometimes, you're like, well, you come out a little bit too harsh and rough. Well, I mean, I'm passionate about things, the way things should be changed. I think we sit idly by, nothing ever gets changed. And what the definition of insanity is, right? The same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Let's not do that in our lives. Let's not do the same thing over again. Let's just go out and make a huge difference. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah, I agree completely. And with that, I just want to say thank you again. I'll make sure to keep up with Big Joe on the Go with your podcast and Main Street Nashville. And I'm really glad you got to get on and share your passions for journalism and everything. And so with that, we will wrap up this episode of Victory Monday.